So, setting that aside, really, what is sales? And before we really get into that, and before we address the sales flow that you're going to be using, let's talk about what sales is, what it used to be, what's required now, what's different in the marketplace, etc., so that you really understand the fundamental principles of 20th century sales versus 21st century sales or evolutionary sales. And we'll also get into the organizing principles of evolutionary sales so you can understand what's underlying every single step of the process. So, let's talk about the 21st century marketplace. The 21st century marketplace has a few really important elements to it. First of all, there's hyper informed consumers. You've seen it on, Carfax.com. You've seen it with Yelp. You've seen it on Amazon.com. Hundreds of people may have reviewed a certain product before you can buy it, and people are reading that. But you can also just, go to Google and look up the history of any particular product or service that you're buying and see if it's been effective. Obviously, this is more useful in terms of actual material products. It's a little bit trickier with services because people have, there's interpersonal relationships involved with that. But for the most part, we have hyper informed consumers. We also have hyper empowered clients and prospects, and they have access to advanced media tools, and those are at their disposal. I saw a T-shirt years ago that just cracked me up in San Francisco. And it simply said, "I'm blogging this." And a guy walking down the street, laptop bag over his shoulder, and his T-shirt said, "I'm blogging this." And it was really before anybody really knew what blogging was. It was several years ago, and that really exemplifies what's going on currently. Today, people also have a high sensitivity to win-lose dynamics. They don't want to feel like they're being leveraged or manipulated or etc. And they have lots of choice. They have choice, they have choice, they have choice. And that is a good thing, by the way. And that is also why the old way of selling is no longer working. It says working well, but really, I don't think it's working at all. At least not successfully. You might close the deal, but you won't open a relationship, but you won't have a ongoing relationship with the client in a way that you want, and it will end up going poorly at some point if you're just slamming the deal home. So let's talk about the old way of selling so that we can contrast it with a new way of selling that we're teaching you very shortly. So here's how I like to sum up 20th century sales. It's subject-object oriented. You're the subject, you're moving or manipulating the object, which is the prospect or client. There's lots of manipulation involved. It's about reframing, it's about negotiation, it's about overcoming objections, all these things. There's I don't know, frankly, where I came up with this, but it's Thunderdome influenced. And it's, two men enter, one man leaves. Right? If you've seen that movie, Mad Max Thunderdome. And it's about closing deals. It's also about shooting prospects down or knocking deals down or, shooting them like ducks in a row or whatever it may be. All those violent metaphors. But really a shooting gallery kind of mentality. And again, a subject-object, us against them. And get the money. The focus is on the money, on the check, rather than the value. As you can imagine, given the 21st century marketplace, of hyper-empowered consumers and hyper-informed consumers and people who are sensitive to win-lose dynamics. This isn't working well. Especially not after the, well, I'll say interesting things that have gone on in the financial industries since 2008. Really, it is about relationships. I mean, it always has been, but now it's not just, you'll be more effective or better if you have your attention around a relationship with your prospect, but now it's actually required. So, what is required to thrive in the 21st century marketplace? So let's talk about what it means to be an evolutionary professional and what those qualities and characteristics are. First, you need to be grounded in service and contribution. It's the place that you need to come from, live in. It's what needs to be underneath everything that you do with your clients and prospective clients. And within that, skills of influence should only be used, quote, ethically, unquote. What does ethically mean? Well, for me, ethical means in service of their outcomes, not yours. In other words, you use it, first of all, with their permission, but in service of their outcomes, not because you need to pay your mortgage or whatever, dot, dot, dot. It's also relational rather than subject-object. You're in a relationship and you're in a partnership together. You're engaged and responsive. You're also curious. Curious about them. You're generally curious about the world. You're curious about what motivates them, why they want to have the things they want to have, etc. Getting to know them at a deeper level. And also you need to demonstrate value and care. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to, become their friend, by the way. We'll talk about boundaries at some point, as I've been quoted recently. You want to be friendly, but you don't necessarily want to be their friend. At least not while you're working together, largely because it's just, it can get messy, lines can get blurred. But you do want to demonstrate value and care. Now, you care about them anyway, and if you do that, the demonstrated value is pretty much going to follow from that. And sometimes it just means that you were surfing the web and you found something that was relevant to a question they asked you, and you just send them that link. But really, that you care what's going on in their life also. Outside of the context of just what you guys are doing together, but also just what's going on in their life. It also, you'll demonstrate win-win-win. Nobody needs to lose in this situation. And the reason it's not just win-win, but win-win-win, is because you're winning by being of service and also, of course, being prosperous. They're winning because they're getting the value that you have to bring to their life, and their life is being changed. And the world wins. Their community wins. Everybody wins. And also transparency. As an evolutionary professional and as an evolutionary sales professional, transparency is critical. And we'll get into more about what that means soon. But transparency is critical. And I actually consider that the litmus test for ethical sales. The litmus test for ethical sales is that you can be transparent about any, quote, sales tactic, end quote, that you're using. But that you can also explain to them why it serves them. And we'll get into that. But let's talk about evolutionary sales, and let's talk about the organizing principles of evolutionary sales. First of all, you're not closing a deal. You're opening a relationship. This is really critical. I don't know who came up with the phrase "closing a deal," as if you're somehow done at that point. My experience has been that it's just beginning once the contract is signed. So not only is opening a relationship more accurate, but it also orients you around being more relational rather than subject object oriented. This one's also critical, especially when you're actually in the sales process with a prospective client. You're not selling your services. I want you to really understand that. You're not selling your services. You're guiding the client to sell themselves on their outcomes and what those outcomes will make possible in their lives. You're not selling your services. You're assisting them essentially in selling themselves on a vision. A vision that, of course, working with you is the gateway. But this is the critical component. This is what has it never feel like sales. Because you're truly not actually selling your services, by the way. Another organizing principle is that you simply need to demonstrate competence with your own congruence and the cogency of your offering. Now, cogency is one of those words that I simply won't let go of. It's one of those wonderful $5 words. Cogency essentially means intellectually compelling. It's such that, when you lay out your offering, people go, yeah, that really makes sense. The next organizing principle is that you have to embody the fact that the money is irrelevant. The money's irrelevant. And value-based selling is another organizing principle. And there's lots of ways, by the way, that these organizing principles will be demonstrated in the sales process in the next screencast, just below this one. But value-based selling, not commodity-based selling. So what is sales? You've written out a bunch of stuff about sales, and I imagine that you have noticed some of the conflicts. You've probably been amused by it if you've reviewed that list already. And we're going to review it, at the beginning of the next screencast as well. But what is sales? And, what is evolutionary sales? Evolutionary sales is the ability to guide someone towards their own vision and, if necessary, leverage them beyond their limitations. And that's what evolutionary sales is. So, the next screencast we'll get into the actual sales flow, the sales flow that you'll be using in your practice. Tried and true, road tested, and I look forward to continuing to contribute to you.